The clang of iron doors, the echo of footsteps in a dark corridor, the heavy silence of confinement. For most, prison is the end of the road, a place where time slows to a crawl, where freedom becomes a distant memory. Behind thick concrete walls and barbed wire fences, some of the world's most dangerous minds are locked away, seemingly for good. But what if it wasn't the end? What if the very walls meant to trap became the blueprint for escape? What if the minds society feared most used their intelligence not for violence, but for the impossible? Welcome to the thrilling, mind-bending world of prison escapes. This isn't fiction. These are real stories, bold, brilliant, and often unbelievable, that defy logic and challenge the limits of human determination. Prison escapes have fascinated people for centuries. There's something about the idea of outsmarting the unescapable that sparks both fear and awe. It's a story of risk, of planning, of adrenaline, of men and women who refuse to accept the cage. These aren't your average criminals. We're talking about masterminds who spent months, even years, studying guard routines, crafting tools from scraps, and digging through solid walls with spoons. Others used charm, deception, and even helicopters to vanish into thin air. Some escapes took minutes, others were decades in the making, and some, well, no one ever saw them coming. In this video, we'll uncover the world's craziest prison escapes, from the mysterious disappearance from Alcatraz Island, to the daring high-tech tunnel beneath a Mexican prison, to skybound getaways that feel more like scenes from an action film than real life. Some escapees were never seen again. Others were caught, but not before making history. What drives a person to risk it all for a shot at freedom? Is it desperation, genius, madness, or something more primal, the human spirit's refusal to be caged? As you listen, remember, these are more than just stories. They are puzzles, they are thrillers, they are reminders that sometimes even the most fortified walls can be broken. And maybe, just maybe, the most dangerous thing in any prison is the mind of the one trying to escape it. The Great Escape from the Rock. Perched in the cold, unforgiving waters of San Francisco Bay, Alcatraz Federal Penitentiary was built to be escape-proof. Surrounded by icy currents, patrolled by armed guards, and fortified with concrete and steel, it was designed to break spirits, not bodies. For years, it housed the worst of the worst, mobsters, murderers, and masterminds. But in 1962, 3 prisoners did the unthinkable and vanished into history. Frank Morris, along with brothers John and Clarence Anglin, were not your average inmates. Morris was a career criminal with a reported IQ of 133, borderline genius. The Anglin brothers were seasoned bank robbers, but smart, disciplined, and extremely close. Together, the trio spent months crafting one of the most daring and mysterious escapes ever attempted. Their plan? Meticulous. Each night, after lights out, the men would remove the vents at the back of their cells, vents they had slowly chipped away at using sharpened spoons, stolen saw blades, and a makeshift drill created from a vacuum cleaner motor. Behind those vents was a utility corridor, which they used to move undetected through the prison's innards. To avoid detection during nightly head counts, the men crafted lifelike dummy heads using a mix of soap, toilet paper, paint, and hair from the barbershop. These fake heads were placed on their pillows to fool guards while the real men were crawling through tunnels toward freedom. Once they reached the roof, the plan entered its most dangerous phase. The trio climbed down drain pipes, scaled fences, and made their way to the water's edge. There, they used a raft and life vests, ingeniously fashioned from over 50 stolen raincoats, to launch into the black, frigid bay. By morning, all that remained were the decoys in the beds and a hole in the wall. The prison went into full lockdown. The FBI launched one of the largest manhunts in history. For years, investigators searched the bay, the nearby islands, and even distant towns, but the escapees were never found. Officially, the U.S. Marshals Service still lists them as wanted. The FBI closed the case in 1979, believing the men had likely drowned. But mystery lingers. Over the years, there have been reported sightings of the Anglin brothers in Brazil. A 2013 letter surfaced, allegedly written by Frank Morris, claiming he was still alive. Family members of the Anglins claim they received postcards and even a Christmas phone call years after the escape. No bodies were ever recovered, no confirmed traces found. Did they survive the deadly swim? Did they start new lives in South America? Or did the sea claim their freedom just as it began? To this day, the Alcatraz escape remains one of the most compelling mysteries in American criminal history. A perfect blend of brilliance, bravery, and an ending that may never be fully written. The drug lord who dug his way out. On the night of July 11th, 2015, Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, one of the most feared and powerful drug lords in the world, vanished from his cell in Mexico's most secure prison, Altiplano. His escape wasn't violent, chaotic, or loud. It was silent, calculated, and shockingly sophisticated. When guards checked his cell that evening, they found it empty. The surveillance camera installed in his room showed him ducking behind the shower wall. And then, nothing. It would later be revealed that beneath that shower floor was a small hole. And beneath that hole, one of the most elaborate escape tunnels ever constructed. Stretching over a mile long, the tunnel led from El Chapo's cell directly to a small house under construction in a nearby neighborhood. But this wasn't just a dirt passage, it was a feat of engineering. The tunnel was over 30 feet deep and equipped with lighting, air ventilation, and even a modified motorcycle mounted on rails, believed to be used to transport tools, dirt, and possibly El Chapo himself during the escape. The operation had been in the works for months, maybe even a year. Guzman's men had managed to dig this massive passage right under the nose of Mexican authorities. Experts estimate that the tunnel required precise GPS tracking to pinpoint the exact location of his cell and avoid detection by seismic sensors. The diggers worked around the clock, using professional-grade tools, all while maintaining total secrecy. Inside the prison, no alarm was raised for over 30 minutes after El Chapo disappeared. By the time guards realized what had happened and discovered the tunnel, he was long gone. Helicopters scanned the area, roadblocks were set up, but Guzman had vanished, again. This wasn't El Chapo's first escape. Back in 2001, he reportedly slipped out of another Mexican prison hidden in a laundry cart. But the 2015 escape shocked the world because of its scale, its precision, and what it revealed. El Chapo had resources, connections, and influence powerful enough to outwit a maximum security prison designed specifically to hold criminals like him. The escape was a huge embarrassment for the Mexican government and raised serious questions about corruption within the prison system. How could such a massive operation take place without inside help? Were guards paid off? Did officials look the other way? 6 months later, El Chapo was recaptured during a dramatic raid in Los Mochis, Sinaloa, but the damage was already done. His tunnel escape became legendary, a real-life crime story that felt more like a Hollywood blockbuster. To this day, the tunnel remains a symbol of how far power and money can go, even underground. El Chapo didn't just escape prison. He embarrassed an entire government, challenged international law enforcement, and reminded the world that when it comes to escaping the inescapable, he plays by his own rules. The sky's the limit. If there's one man who made real life look like an action movie, it's Pascal Payet, a French criminal best known not just for escaping prison, but for doing it from the sky. While most inmates spend years plotting how to crawl under walls or break through bars, Payet looked up and thought, why not fly out? Pascal Payet was no small-time offender. Convicted of murder and armed robbery, he was sentenced to 30 years in prison, but confinement was never part of his plan. In 2001, while locked up in Loins prison in southern France, Payet pulled off one of the most dramatic escapes in modern criminal history using a hijacked helicopter. His accomplices chartered a helicopter under false pretenses, forced the pilot at gunpoint to fly to the prison, and landed it directly in the courtyard. Within minutes, Payet was lifted from behind bars and vanished into the skies. The authorities were left stunned, unprepared for a prison break straight out of a blockbuster film. Though he was recaptured just a few months later, Payet wasn't done. In 2003, now back in prison, he orchestrated another helicopter escape, but this time, it wasn't for himself. He helped break out 3 other inmates using the same airborne method. It was a bold move that showed just how far his influence and planning extended even from behind bars. Again, helicopters, guns, and a swift exit. France's prisons weren't just compromised, they were humiliated. But Payet's most audacious escape came in 2007. He had been transferred to a high-security facility and was kept in solitary confinement. He was considered one of the most dangerous and escape-prone inmates in the country. He was moved regularly, and his movements were kept secret. Yet it didn't matter. On July 14, 2007, Bastille Day, France's national holiday, a group of armed men hijacked a helicopter in Cannes. They flew it more than 100 kilometers to Grasse prison, landed it inside the prison courtyard, and picked up Payet in under 5 minutes. Once again, he soared into the sky while the world watched in disbelief. This time, the manhunt was global. French police worked with Interpol, and after a 6-week chase across Europe and North Africa, Payet was finally recaptured in Spain. He was immediately returned to France and placed under the strictest conditions possible. Since then, France has invested heavily in securing prisons against airborne escapes. Many facilities now have wires or netting stretched over open spaces to prevent helicopter landings, a direct result of Pascal Payet's high-flying exploits. Payet didn't just escape prison, he redefined what it meant to be a flight risk, literally. His escapes remain legendary, not just for their daring but for their theatrical brilliance. If ever there was a real-life James Bond villain, Pascal Payet would be him, cool, calculated, and airborne. Legends, lessons, and locked doors. Each of these escapes left behind more than just an empty cell. They left questions, fear, and a long-lasting impact on prison systems around the world. Let's start with Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers of the Alcatraz escape. To this day, their fate remains a mystery. Officially, they were never found. The FBI believes they likely drowned in the frigid waters of San Francisco Bay, but no bodies were ever recovered. Family members of the Anglins insist the brothers survived and even claim to have received letters and photos years later. While the U.S. Marshals still list the 3 men as fugitives, their story has become a blend of fact, folklore, and fascination, a cold case that may never truly close. El Chapo, on the other hand, wasn't so lucky. After his dramatic tunnel escape in 2015, he was recaptured just 6 months later. Authorities cornered him in Los Mochis, Sinaloa, after a gunfight with Mexican Marines. This time, there were no tunnels, no tricks, no escapes. In 2017, he was extradited to the United States, tried, and convicted on multiple charges including drug trafficking, murder, and money laundering. Today, he sits in ADX Florence, America's most secure federal prison, also known as the Alcatraz of the Rockies. Escape? Not a chance. Pascal Payet, the man who made helicopter escapes his signature move, is also back where he started, behind bars. After his final airborne stunt in 2007, he was recaptured in Spain and returned to France. Today, he is held under extreme security conditions, in isolation, moved frequently, and watched around the clock. His actions forced France to reevaluate prison design, with many facilities now adding netting, sensors, and other aerial defenses to prevent future skybound escapes. These escapes didn't just make headlines, they forced change. After Alcatraz, the U.S. prison system increased monitoring of inmate behavior, improved infrastructure, and began to emphasize psychological profiling to identify high-risk escapees. El Chapo's escape exposed deep flaws in Mexico's prison system and highlighted the dangerous reach of organized crime. It also pushed international cooperation between law enforcement agencies, especially in the fight against drug cartels. And Payet's daring flights led to innovations in prison architecture. Who would have thought rooftop landings would become a security threat? But beyond the bars and guards, these stories share something deeper, a testament to human willpower. Right or wrong, these individuals demonstrated astonishing ingenuity, patience, and courage under pressure. They challenged the idea that any system is truly impenetrable. Still, the consequences are clear. For most, freedom was short-lived. Their escapes made them legends, but legends don't last long in the real world. Prison systems have evolved. Walls have gotten higher, cameras sharper, technology smarter. But one thing remains unchanged: the enduring belief that no matter how strong the cage, someone, somewhere, is already thinking of a way out. And that's what makes these the world's craziest prison escapes.